Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be. We certainly appreciate everybody being in the live stream, or those ones who are going to come back and be able to watch the rerun. It's nice to have you here. So today, we want to know a few questions. We want to see if we can be able to, here's our little thing here, highlights. Can we move on and up? Well, today we're going to look at some practical steps of how we can do this. What are some of the tools we can use? You've seen during the week we would put up posts about what can we learn from, maybe it's women's rugby, American football, the soccer, a pole vault. There are all things in common that we can learn. And that's what we want to know about. We want to get to being as practical as possible. So in way of introduction, we're going to play a video, and all going well, it will play. So let's just bring that up and watch it. We'll come back to you very shortly. So, who's the most important member of your team? While it's a sports-related movie, the same principles about what we're talking on, can we move on and up, still apply. Did you notice the coach, what he was able to do in motivating that guy to do the death crawl? Who motivates you? Who helps you? We've all been traumatized, brainwashed into thinking certain ways. Well, today we're going to be able to give some practical steps. I'm going to bring on a very nice guy who's one of our life coaches in Dare to Dream. Let me do that right now. It's Gary.
Hi.
How's it going today, Gary?
Good, how are you?
Yeah, excellent, my friend.
Yeah.
So how can you help us to look at ourselves as the most valuable person on our own team, Gary?
Well, it's not something that's taught, of course. You know, in our past, it was always more about the organization and the elder body, and but it's just really important to see, to get past that thinking that, humility, which is a good quality. It's good to be humble. The opposite is obnoxious, actually. But humility does not require you to have like little to no self-esteem and to think of yourself as not important as an individual, because you are. I used to give a talk on when I was an elder on, does God count you personally important? And when I was talking about it, I would really drill it into my head, because I suffered from that thing also, where I thought, how could I possibly be important in the eternal scheme of things when there are 8 billion people on the planet, so I think you can reinforce it in your mind when you tell yourself. In my case, I was telling an audience all the time, and I didn't actually hear that particular material very often. It was more often they'd hear about, how important the organization is and the elder body, and how little each person really counts for anything. But I think it starts with telling yourself, even if it means helping somebody else. You're kind of telling yourself, if that person, if I could tell this person how important they are, then what would I want them to say to me? So say that to yourself. Tell yourself how important you are.
And how do you find it when people listen to that sort of advice?
I think if you frame it that way, like, in other words, like if you were talking to me, like a person comes to me for help, and I said, if it was the other way around, if I was on the other side of the table and you were coaching me, what would you say? If I told you I think I'm just a lousy piece of crap, I don't matter, what would you say? And nobody's ever going to say, well, maybe you're right, maybe you are just a lousy piece. They're always going to, so just hear it in your head, and talk to yourself the way you'd want somebody to talk to you. It's kind of the opposite of the golden rule. do unto others as you'd have them do to you. Do to yourself what you would want people to do to you in that case. And I think when that it's like a light bulb goes off. And that's what I love about life coaching and different things like that, where you're actually trying to help people. When that light bulb goes off, it's like, holy mackerel. It like that, I never thought of it that way before. And then the trick is just to do that all the time, because we're gonna have lapses and things like that. But and you can actually kind of light a fire, not just within yourself, but when you start telling other people what you've learned, you're spreading it. It spreads like wildfire, and everybody is feeling really good.
Yep. So do you think it's important that, like in the JWs, we were always taught, go to the elders, never had the training. Do you think it's important that we try and get out of our little square to have somebody look in and help us and guide us?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody, if when you're sick, you go to a doctor, go to absorb all the knowledge he has, so you can be a doctor. You're just going for his advice. So you go to an auto mechanic because you don't have time or the knowledge to be an auto mechanic. So it's always okay to get. I think we tend to think that that's not what I want to do, because it was drummed into our heads that the elders can solve all our problems, and that's just intuitive. It's just so counterintuitive. It's ridiculous to think that just because they supposedly met some scriptural qualifications to be appointed, that they can advise you on child raising, on how to quit a drug habit. I mean, we've seen firsthand many times over how incredibly inept that whole arrangement is in the cases of like rape and pedophilia. How they just handle it wrong every time, just completely wrong every time. Like everything you can imagine doing wrong is what they do, because they just don't have the training for it. So I think we imagine that's not the way to go. We gotta do it from within, which is important. We do have to get the strength and the wherewithal from within. But when you talk to like a life coach or someone like that, or even a therapist, they can help you to kind of sort out all the what I call head trash, the negative thinking that really doesn't belong there.
Yeah. So the fear of approaching somebody like yourself, is there anything to be fearful of? Because the JWs will, like, I know when I was growing up, my father would say, no, you don't go to a therapist. You don't go to those individuals because they are going to seduce you or something like that. And a lot of people carry that with them. Is there a fear that you might seduce us into thinking things that are not us?
Well, that's not impossible. I mean, you could go to someone that's just, trying to start his own cult or something like that. It probably does happen, but it's rare, because the difference between a life coach and an elder is that life coaches, well, you don't have to get training you could just call yourself a life coach, but to be certified as a life coach by a world organization like the International Coaching Federation is the one that certified me. You have to pass a course. I mean, it's like a half a year of classroom stuff and one-on-ones, role playing, and then actually coaching real people and getting feedback and from the people you coached, as well as the people that are mentors. It's not inconceivable that someone could pass all that stuff and not be the one you should talk to, but there's a very, very good chance that you'd be in good hands because of all that training that elders just don't get. They're always talking about how much they work for the congregation, how giving they are, how much they're educated, and not really. It's not even. Yeah, there's training, but it really. I mean, I was an elder for 10 years. They really don't train you at all how to handle a specific thing, like how to handle an accusation of pedophilia or a business thing. It's just scriptures, and what do the scriptures say about stuff like that?
Yeah,
I mean, I hold the Bible in high esteem. Don't get me wrong, but it's not designed to teach us how to counsel somebody
No.
some real difficult problems, and it wasn't meant to be. It's like the society was always saying that it's not a science textbook, so don't expect to see a lot
Yeah,
of
that's right.
scientific, things. But when it does touch on science, it's accurate. That's what they'd always say. It's you can say the same thing about anything. If you want to be an auto
Mm.
mechanic, go look in the Bible. It's like, how's that going to help you? So anyway, to get back to your question, the things I would look for is well, I can tell you the way I operate. Not that this is my personal commercial, but I don't really give advice, and I don't judge people at all ever, and I don't really give advice. People think I do because they come away thinking, "Wow, I've been struggling with this issue, and now I know what to do." I didn't
Yeah.
actually tell them what to do. That's what they don't realize. And I'll remind them that. I'll say, you see, what it really is happening here is that you have the mental capability to solve your problems. What happens is we get choked mentally because there's so many overwhelming things, like with my story, how I left the organization. There was so much overwhelming nonsense that happened all at one point in time that how do you sort it all out? Where do you start? You can't solve all these problems in one day. So you got to,
Yeah.
so that's where a life coach can help because they just help you focus
Mm.
and like focus on a goal and like one goal at a time, maybe a couple of sub goals, but one major goal, like what did you come here for? Oh, you want to be president of the United States? Okay, let's see how we can get you there. Whatever, or you just want to be a better mother, so that's the one goal you've got. So let's talk about that goal and then talk about some subtasks that would contribute to that goal and how to overcome obstacles. What are some of the obstacles? What are some of the great wins that you've had in the last couple of weeks? What have you done well that you're really proud of? And when people talk, it's like what I was saying before about talking to another person about how you're personally important, and it kind of it clears your head of all kinds of nonsense, and before you know it, you're answering your own questions. And I guide them, but I never really tell people, well, have you thought about trying this or so. That's my approach. It's not necessarily everybody else's approach. Like I see a lot of posts from um, different life coaches and people with similar qualifications that are advice driven, which is fine. And like I know people who do deprogramming. They actually help you to put away, like realize why you're feeling insecure, why you can't make friends, or why it's hard making friends. It's because of this, and that from that the cult drilled into your head. So how do you get rid of that? What do you replace that with? That's a deprogramming kind of a technique. So there are people that do that and they're skilled at it. Um, so to get back to your question about is there any kind of fear? If you've interview the guy first of all. Like if somebody looks me up and says, um, I heard that you're a life coach and so and so recommended me. Interview me. Don't let me off the hook. Find out like what's my approach and how do you feel about this and how do you feel about that. And if something makes you feel uncomfortable, move on. Go to somebody else. I don't think you're going to have that experience because all life coaches I know are really good, as well as therapists. But you want to. The big fear is that you don't want to go through the judgmental nonsense and the punishing kind of techniques that the organization used. Um, Frankly, you're just not going to find that in a life coach. I really would be amazed if you did, but that's the big fear. So that it's. I'm not saying like don't look for it because you definitely don't want to pick the wrong person, but just be assured that the fears that are associated with the organization are not really going to exist for the most part.
Right. So we're not in there for a start, are we?
Hmm?
So we're not we're not in there for a start. So
Right,
we
right,
don't have to listen to what their thinking was.
right.
Now let's
Yeah,
say, well, we've just put it out there for any of those who are listening. If you want to ask a question, by all means, put it in the comments. We'll put it up, and we'll get Gary to help us with that.
hmm,
So let's look at a practical thing. Say in the J-Dubs, we were always apologizing for everything and anything.
hmm.
How could, or what sort of way would you look at that to help a person so that they didn't have to always apologize, because that's something that a lot of ones in the J-dubs feel. When I was an elder, it was exactly the same thing. They were apologizing for little things which you're thinking, you don't need to worry about that. So how would you deal with, say, somebody who came to you saying, look, I'm apologizing, I'm don't know why I'm doing it, and I can't stop?
Okay. Well, I might ask. I might start with, like, how is it affecting you? Like,
Okay.
how is it getting between you and your goals? But even if it's not appropriate to start that way, I might say, well, maybe you can just give me a couple of examples of something you might apologize for, because there are times when we should apologize. I mean, when you do something wrong and you hurt somebody,
Absolutely.
you should apologize, and it's a great feeling when you apologize to somebody, and especially when they forgive you. It's the most freeing thing in the world. So there are times when apology is important. You just don't want to do it in such a way that you're like, like rolling in the mud. Like, I'm just a piece of garbage, and I just always do these stupid things. I'm really sorry I did it again. That just. But anyway, and if on the other hand, it's an example of an apology that wasn't, warranted. Like, why did you need to apologize? I wouldn't say, well, you didn't really need to, but I would say, could you tell me, like, why was it necessary to apologize in that case? Like, what if you were the one that um, had observed that the behavior that another person was apologizing for, and they came to you? How would you react? Like, would you be like, what are you talking? I mean, it's happened to me many times where in the organization I apologized to somebody because the elders made me feel like I needed to, and they'd be like, what are you talking about? So I would just say, give me just some examples of something that you might apologize for, and let's kind of look at those things and see, you know, if it was appropriate. Did you do it in a way that really dehumanize yourself and took away your power, or was it more freeing, where you actually were able to express something that you should have, and then what was their reaction, or was it one of those situations where, like, you really didn't need to,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then what I would do is, because again I do it as a goal-based thing, is I would say, all right, so in the next week, what do you think? And I'm not going to give them an assignment. I have them come up with it. What do you think that you could do to work on that in the next week? Like, and hopefully they'll come up with something like, well, um, you know, um, the next time I feel the urge to, I'm going to just sit back and really think, do I really need to do that, or maybe even write it down, or
Yeah.
whatever they come up with, and then we'll talk about it next week or in 2 weeks or whatever. How did you do with that? And it's always going to be a hurrah session, because people, people that come to me for life coaching, it's an amazing thing. It's, sometimes they get a little stuck and they backtracked a little bit, but for the most part, it's just like all these hurrah moments. Like, good for you, you did a great job. So that I haven't had somebody come to me with that yet, but that's what I think I would do.
Great. So just stepping back through what you've just said, are we allowed to ask questions?
Of the life coach?
Yeah.
You mean in a session with a life coach? You mean?
In a session, you talked about before, the elders and what J-dubs sort of demand of us, going to the elders. We're sort of not encouraged to ask a lot of questions, really, because it's
Right.
speaking against the governing body, who
Right.
that sort of thing. So in a session, leading up to the sessions, we're allowed to ask coaches questions to help us.
Right. Yeah, anything really. I mean, if it's not appropriate, like it's too
Yeah.
personal, but no, people are not going to do that. No, I mean, the kind of questions you're talking about, like, yeah, they just shut you down. And again, you're so discouraged from asking questions that make you feel guilty about it. The old cliche, there are no dumb questions, or there are no stupid questions, just stupid answers, or something like that. There really aren't any dumb questions. I mean, if it's something that I like if somebody asks me something that has to do with a mental health issue, I might not give them the answer they're looking for, because I might say, well, I'm not really, educated or qualified or experienced to to handle that, but I could certainly refer you to someone depending on where you live, you know. But that's still, there was nothing wrong with the question. I mean, so yeah, there's no question that's going to be, you're going to get slapped down. Yeah.
Okay.
And again, when you're talking to somebody, you know, for the first time and you're wondering whether to use their services or not, you have every right to ask them questions, you know. How would you do this, or how would you, you know, just ask, you know, what's what's the worst that's going to happen? If they don't know the answer, they'll tell you they don't know the answer, but they're not going to slap you down and say, "How dare you?" That's just not going to happen.
And the benefit with asking yourself like a personal question is what? So they're trying to work out whether they want to work with you. What's the benefit to them by asking you questions?
Um, well, I would think that the things that you're trying to determine with you know, hiring a life coach are, especially because of your past, are going to be, are you just going to tell me what to do? Are you going to report me to somebody? Are you going to be judgmental? I think I said that already.
Yep.
You know, things like that, or and you can even be specific and say, well, what, like for example, if I wanted to be, you know, I'm an 18-year-old girl, you know, woman that wanted, or I'm a 20-year-old woman that wanted to go to college, but I couldn't. And now I'm out and I don't know what to do. And I'm really thinking I'd like to be the Prime Minister of England. That's what I want to do. What do you think of that? You know, I mean, that's a good question. It really is, because you don't want a life coach that's going to be like, well, aren't you aiming a little bit high? I can't handle that. Because a goal's a goal. I don't care what it is. I don't know if you want to learn how to knit or if you want to be the Prime Minister of England. If that's your goal, let's talk about it and we'll see how we can get you there. So there are just no bad questions.
Okay, cool. So it's totally different from being in the J-Dubs.
Yeah, you know, you asking questions is I can't even think of a question you could ask, you know, that would be appropriate.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Oh,
and because you know, it's an ego thing really with the elders, that they think that they're appointed by Holy Spirit first of all, and so therefore they're ultra qualified, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, a man might appear to be the most humble person on the planet, you know, but when you ask them a question, it's assumed that you're questioning their authority, or you know, and that's an ego issue. That's ridiculous, you know. That you gotta run when somebody does that, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
you can ask me, well, what makes you qualified to handle somebody that's schizophrenic? And I would say, well, it's a good question. Actually, I'm not qualified to. You know what I mean? It's like there's no question that you can ask a life coach that's going to be a slam down thing.
Okay. Very true. So if a person is sitting there going, I don't want to go to a life coach, but I've got this and this and this, what would you say to encourage them to reach out to one like yourself that could help them?
Mm-hmm. I would say, what is the one goal that you want to, the most important, or the goal that you can actually achieve. And what I mean by that is, like, don't you know, when you have subtasks, like things that I want to accomplish this week, if you can't physically or literally do one of them, just leave it for another week, you know. Don't, so even with the main goals, is it something you can actually change, something you can actually work on, or is it something completely that you just can't right now because of whatever reason, because you're not old enough yet, or whatever it is, you know. But then I would say, okay, so what of the goals that you can actually do something about, what is the most important one? What's the one that you think you need to first achieve? And then we're just going to work on that goal. That's it. And
So
they're going to be.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, they're going to be subtasks and you know, things and you know, checkpoints and things like that. But it's really the one goal that you're looking at. And then if you have another one down the road, you might not even have another one, because you might find that it's all kind of tied together, you know. Or you might, you know, then we'll just keep going. That's fine. But again, it's one thing at a time. I don't like to. I mean, with my personal story of how I left, things were so incredibly overwhelming that I just had to say, what is the one thing that I can actually do something about now? and or maybe there are three things, and of those three things, what is the most important one to work on? And it could have been like getting my cell phone back from the police. That was the first thing. First, I had to get a taxi cab to get to the police department, and then it's like the big things, like I got to hire a lawyer, and all these different things. But if you just do it one goal at a time, it's amazing how much clarity you can have, and how you can focus on that goal, and everything else starts falling into place.
Yeah, but like that footage we were watching before,
Right,
one movement of the leg, one movement
right,
of the arm,
right,
and he got down the end. So we've got to take baby steps sometimes, don't we?
right. Yep. Yeah, that's how
What's,
I describe it. Yeah.
yep, yep.
I mean,
So,
here, like in my experience, here I was like, I don't know, 50 something, 52 years old or whatever the heck I was, and
yep,
some of the things that I wrote down as things I got to do today were so idiotic, you'd be amazed, like really you had to write that down. But it got so complicated and so overwhelming that's what I did. Was I just said, okay, forget about all the stuff that I can't do today, that I
yep.
can't do till tomorrow or the next week. If I can't affect it, if I can't control it, I can't worry about it. And then I would just pick the most important one, or the one that had to be done first, or what have you. Um, and yeah, it's kind of like the football player. I'd be interested in knowing what position he was going to play. I guess probably a defensive, like lineman position or something, because they have to bulk up. It's not so much about agility and stuff. But
Yeah.
is that guy important to the team? Absolutely. If they sack the quarterback, the game's over. So yeah, everybody's important, and just one goal at a time.
So would it be good surrounding ourselves with other ones in our lives to help us reach our goals?
Oh yeah, it absolutely is. Um, and that could be a problem in itself, because the ex-JW community is pretty spread out. Like I knew nobody in Pennsylvania, or within a mile, or an hour and a half, that I could even call on the phone. Just nobody. I mean, I had plenty of so-called worldly friends, who were indispensable, but
Mm.
and they can coach you on. That's for sure. And they did, actually. But so the JW community is kind of spread out. But that's another thing that people have come to me about, or I've actually approached them about it at times, is where do you find friends? How do you do it? It's daunting. So for some people, it's actually easy because of the theocratic ministry school and the ministry that
Yep.
kind of helped them to talk to any old person. But other people are terrified of it. And this, I talk about that in the story I wrote for the book, Fear to Freedom. I talk about making friends, and the importance of it, and how to do it. Depending upon your age. But it's important to have. But the other thing to realize with a rooting squad, or a cheerleader team behind you, is that not everybody is going to be that person. You could.
Yeah.
And this was true when we were in the organization. We might have had 80 friends because there were 80 people in our congregation, so we considered them all friends. Well, how many of them were really friends?
Yep.
And when you come down to it, you get maybe half of that number are people that you really know pretty well. Half of that number are people that you've had over for dinner. And
Yeah.
when you really come down to it, you might have half a dozen that you go to a ball game with. But who are the core people that you really rely on, and you can talk to them about anything? Well, probably nobody, because you can't talk to JW about anything, because it'll turn you in. But
That's right.
but I mean, those really close friends that you like, they're just close as you can imagine. You might just have two or three.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, I think I have maybe two. That of people and they're not JWs, but that are really good friends that I can talk to anything about.
Mm.
But then as you widen the circle, it's 10, 20, 30, 40, 60, 100. So, but it is important.
So you're telling me on the friends front, it is possible to make friends?
Yeah.
Could
Um,
you, from your own experience and also what you would encourage somebody to do, what would be the first step? Because I know a lot of people do struggle
mm,
with making friends. Where do they find them?
mm,
They feel alone and they're just stuck in their own shell,
right,
not knowing how to get out of it.
right.
What would be a good first step?
Well, you mentioned where to meet people, so that's a good first step. I met most of the friends I have today, probably most of them, through a radio station that I used to do volunteer work for.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Just answering phones and, during fundraiser drives. And it was because I felt very importantly about music, and I still do. And this particular radio station was just fantastic. And I wanted to support it.
Yep.
So how did I make friends there? It was actually pretty easy because they're all people with the same love. Their main love in life is music. And they love this radio station, and they want it to survive and thrive. So we all have the same goals. So we're just talking about, oh yeah, did you see that? I'm trying to think of the name of the group, but did you see that Roseanne Cash concert or whatever? Oh yeah, and before you know it, you're having coffee with them, and after the fun drive is over, you go to dinner, and you can't not make friends with those people because they're good people. That's the other thing. The people that tend to volunteer for things tend to be charitable kind of people, that they see the value in doing something that they're not actually going to get anything from, really. Like I used to volunteer at a theater. It used to be a movie theater, but now it's a performance venue. And I'd get to see the show for free, but they're not going to give me a nickel. It's just you can think of it as a complete waste of time, really, because I don't get anything for it. But you're doing something that you think is important, and guess what? All these other people feel the same way, and before you know it, you're friends with these people. Just think of any kind of charity. I mean, I've given to like a charity called Women's Resources that helps women that are from battered households, and they're trying to restart their lives. You meet some beautiful, beautiful people that way, just that all feel this. And it could be leukemia research. It could be anything you feel strongly about. Spend some time with those kind of people. So that's the start on how to find. So the obvious answer is like go to concerts or go to bars or whatever, but I mean, you really want to find people with common interests, and that you're pretty good right off the bat, pretty sure right off the bat are going to be, good people, quality people, So I got other things to say about it too, but that's to answer your first question. That's one way of meeting people.
Right. So look at the passions that you have, find community areas, and just go and do it.
Right. I mean, they're not going to turn you down. You don't have to have a lot of
No,
qualifications to take to scan tickets at a concert theater. You just walk in there and say, what do you need me to do? Well, we'd like you to be an usher tonight, or we need you to, whatever, scan tickets or check people's bags on the way in. And they show you how to do it. You don't have to have any skills for that kind of stuff. And most volunteer organizations are like that. The people with the real skills, they're running this thing. But you're just doing whatever they ask you to do, and then you're hanging around with people that are just like you. It's a great way to meet people.
Cool. So the next step from that would be?
Well, the next step is not so much a step, but I think it's important to put it somewhere near the beginning, is to understand that you're not the only one that might have difficulty making friends. There's a really good chance that everybody you meet has a hard time making friends, especially in today's society, because you figure that people who've grown up in the last, generation or so are so used to living life through social media and through, interactive games that they don't know how to make friends. There's not that many people around that I know of that really know how to make friends and cultivate a relationship. It's a crazy world. So you're not the only one. In fact, you probably have a leg up on them. Because if you weren't supposed to be playing video games, and not that they're evil or anything, but you probably weren't supposed to be doing that stuff when you were a kid. So you were kind of forced to interact with people, even if they were just Jehovah's Witnesses and there was no quality to it because the only commonality was religious thought. It's still, you were interacting with people, and you might actually have a leg up on all these people you're going to meet on any given day that have no clue how to. So just be aware that you're not the only one with the problem. And that people don't wear their heart on their sleeve. They're not, when you start talking to somebody on the line at the grocery store, they're not going to say, oh, thanks for talking to me. I have a really hard time making friends, and I'm really insecure. People don't, so you got to realize that people are people, and they're struggling the same way you are. There's a very good chance of that. But anyway, getting beyond that, just realizing that, it's just, give something. I don't mean you have to buy them a gift or anything, but this is back to like, so you met a bunch of people at where you're volunteering, whatever it is, at the women's center or your candy striper, if they still have such things like that. Then it's like, well, hey, what are you doing this Saturday? Why don't you come over for a cup of tea? It doesn't have to be anything fancy, and just bring some quality to it. Be cheerful. Be the kind of person that somebody's going to actually like. And I don't mean like kiss their butt. Try to be something you're not, but just bring something to the relationship, and they're not going to want to let go of you.
So just looking back over the few things that you've mentioned, if somebody can't handle that, how could a life coach help them realize that they do have the ability within themselves?
Okay, well, again, talking about it, is what really makes people brainstorm. So again, what's your goal? Well, I just like to make more friends. It's nothing fancy. I don't want to be a nuclear scientist. I just want to make some friends. Okay, well, those are good goals. That's nothing wrong with that. That's a very lofty goal, actually. So, what obstacles have you come across in the past, or what do you think some obstacles might be? Then we'll talk about those obstacles, and then before you know it, we're talking about like what steps do you think you can take in the next 2 weeks before we meet again to make like one friend, or well, first, well, how about if you meet 3 people and have a goal of making one of them a friend, whatever. So again, goals become tasks, and then there's accountability. Like, okay, so how did you do with what we talked about doing last week? And just when you have a set goal and you have accountability, in other words, I don't mean that in some kind of negative way, it sounds horrible, but when you have accountability in the sense that you're in 2 weeks or whatever, you're going to meet with the life coach again, and he's going to want to know, how did you do with the tasks that we agreed that are a good idea for you to execute. He's not going to hold your feet to the fire. He's not going to penalize you or charge you money or put you in jail or slap you on the wrist. It's just, but he's just going to want to know, like, how did you do with that? When you have that set of tasks in front of you, and you even write it down, and you have the accountability because your coach is going to be asking you about it, or maybe you've designated another person to be the person who's going to check your accountability. And I can't emphasize it enough, just talking about it with the life coach and talking about the obstacles, what you've done in the past that was good and effective, your brain is going to get so clear, your mind is going to get so clear that you'll be coming up with ideas that I've just given you a couple of ideas about volunteering, realizing about how social media affects things. You're gonna completely blow me out of the water. You're gonna be like a genius on the topic just from talking about it and me saying, that's interesting. So
you're never going to be judgmental?
No. I mean, that's my goal, is to never be judgmental. Again, I'm not perfect, so I can't say that, but I really don't think I've ever lapsed into that when I've been in a life coach position. I might do that a little bit in personal life, because I think all of us, even though we don't like people being judgmental, every time we cross the street, because you're a white guy and you see a bunch of black guys standing on the corner, and you're like, oh, I don't know, all right, is it racist that you cross the street? It's you didn't hurt them, you know what I mean? So you just decided like it's safer to do that. So did you judge those people? I don't know, but it's not like a serious judgment, like where you're really like saying those guys are a bunch of thieves. I know that, and I'm going to call the police on them, or I'm not letting them in my store or something like that. That's hurtful judgmentalism. So I can't say I'm perfect about not judging people, but I'm pretty sure I don't do that. It's one of my personal goals, to not be judgmental. Even when I was an elder, I tried not to be, even though you have to at times. That's your job a lot of the time, as you know. I still tried to. I was kind of a life coach as an elder, to be honest with you. I was like more listening to, like, asking people, what do you want from this situation? What do you want to have happen here? Instead of like, so you overdrank last night. Well, what does the Bible say about that? That's crap. I mean, everybody knows what the Bible says. Give me a break. I would just ask those magic questions like, what do you want to have happen here? Do you want to repeat? What do you want? Where do you want your life to go from this point on? And if I'm not the chairman of the situation, it's really hard to direct the conversation that way. But
It is, yeah, definitely.
yeah, but that was always the way I tried to do it. And then whatever they'd say, I just give you a quick example. I don't want to go way off topic or anything, but just a quick example was one time two of us were called on to visit a home of people that were not witnesses, but their daughter from another state across the river was, and she had fled to their house because her husband hit her. I don't know how many times, but he hit her. And she's a young girl, like 18 or 20 years old, you know. And then I asked that magic question, and I didn't make this up, by the way. I'm not taking credit for it. I heard it from another elder who's now a circuit overseer, who happens to be a very good person now. And I just said, "Well, what do you want to have happen here?" And she says, "Well, what do you mean?" Like, well, I said, "Well, you have different options. You're going to go home. You're going to stay here. What do you want? What do you want?" And she said, "Well, I really love him, and I want to go back home." And her parents are looking at me like, "We don't want it. They hate." So I said, "Okay, I mean, that's her answer. So what am I going to do? Contradict her?" I just said, "Okay, so what does that look like? How are you going to do that? What does it look like when you're finally back home? Tell me about it." What I wanted to say was, "You're crazy to go back to a guy that hit you, because he's going to do it again and again and again." Of course, elders are never supposed to do that because you haven't met one of the three qualifications of separation, so we always
Yeah.
told them stupid. So, but before you know it, they're thinking, and so I just have always applied. So I just was not judging her or her husband. I don't know whether he hit her or not. Probably did, but I don't know. It's none of my business. I'm just like, well, what do you want to do here? And how can we help you do it? So I just kind of ported that over into my life coach life, and I can really be non-judgmental, because elders are called on from time to time to be judgmental. That's when you're trying to decide this fellowship or not. You're judging, period. And I never want to be in that position again. But anyway, so I think I digressed a little bit there, but anyway.
That's fine. That's fine. It just lets us know a little bit of history in your case that you can apply to. Not only do you understand the XJW community because you were one, but you can also help other people because of your experience. And that's important.
Yeah.
You've had life experience.
Right.
And you've indicated that. So is there real benefit? So looking back on everything we've talked about, is there real benefit in getting hold of a life coach that fits our own circumstances to help us reach goals?
Yes. I don't think it's necessary, because I mean, I've had people come to me that they just want to lose weight, or whatever. I never had an issue with that. So you don't have to necessarily identify with everything right down the line, but because it's the same techniques that you use. But it really, really helps. And I've even seen this in the psychiatric community. Not that I'm in that community, but I've seen it as an observer.
Yeah.
Where I just read a book recently, actually, that was written just for people in the mental health field, just not for advice on techniques on how to help somebody that's coming out of a cult or high control group, but just how to understand them. Because by and large, the mental health community has no idea about the effects. They're looking at people that were beaten as kids, and that's true of some Jehovah's Witnesses and stuff. But there's some unique things that it's just, you have to have been, you might have led what would on the outside seem like a completely normal life. You have a happy family, your mom and dad love you, and they give you things and this and that. But it was abnormal because of the teachings of the high control group that we're in. So that's something that the mental health community has to kind of get better at, I guess. But I don't deal with mental health issues as a life coach. I do think it helps. Like I said, it doesn't have to be present, but it only makes sense that if you're going to ask somebody for help with, your kid, that it's somebody that's had a kid. I mean, it just makes sense. I'm not saying that somebody that doesn't have a kid is disqualified, but wouldn't it give you a comfort level? And even though I'm not actually giving advice, so if somebody comes to me and they're an ex Jehovah's Witness, and their issue has to, and I ask them, what are your goals? And they say, I just want to be happy. Well, what does happy mean to you? Well, I'd like to have more friends. Well, okay, that's something we can work on. So then, along the way, they might talk about why it's so difficult to make friends, and it has to do with the fact that
Yep.
we were not allowed to talk to worldly kids and this and that. I'm still gonna approach it in a goal based way. I'm not a deprogrammer or a mental health person. If you need that, I'll direct you to the right person. But that's not my thing. Um, but it's a quicker way to get to a goal than to spend like months and months and months and maybe years of therapy, which has its place. Don't get me wrong; it's got its own value. But a life coach is just it's usually typically a month, 3 months, 6 months maybe, and then unless you have more goals to talk about, what else did you want to talk about? Nothing. Okay, then you're pretty much done. Um, so I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it does. So
Okay.
does it mean that somebody couldn't come back to you, that like you just mentioned, that they've reached their goal and they can't think of anything else? Does it mean
Oh,
they can stay away or never come back to you?
oh, they can come back. They can come back to me or find somebody else or whatever. But yeah, repeat clients. Yeah, I mean, let's say your goal is just like I just want to be happy. I've been so unhappy for so long, and I don't have any friends. And then a year down the line, you want to write your first book.
Yep.
How do I do that? I don't know how to. Well, all right, let's talk about it. I've written a couple of books, but that doesn't necessarily what that's. But you might have a goal a couple of years down the line to start your own, I don't know, open a hot dog stand or open up a dress shop or something like that. How do I do it? I mean, do I have to incorporate? Should I, there's a million. So let's take it one step at a time, one goal at a time. And that you could come back to me every year for the rest of your life if you want to, or you might get to the point where you got it so figured out that you don't need, you have enough friends that can kind of help you with, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think once you're over the hump of always having to talk to the congregation elders about stuff or always getting slammed down, once you're over that, you find that you can approach your goals a lot more effectively on your own. But there's nothing wrong, absolutely nothing wrong with approaching the same life coach a half a dozen times throughout your life. Every time you have a new set of goals that you don't know how to tackle.
Great. Nice practical help. So this comment here, we've been miserable for a long time when we were J-dubs.
Yeah.
How can we start turning that around? Because until we get over, you used the word hump before, I've been a J-dub.
Mhm.
How can we start working on that?
I would say what is it about what is it that's well I probably wouldn't really go there actually. I would probably want to determine pretty quickly whether this is somebody that I can help because
Yeah.
again it's a goal based thing. So I would say, well, in terms of goals, to get beyond, and because I get it. I mean, I wasn't really super unhappy most of the time in the Jehovah's Witnesses. At the end, it was very unhappy. In the last 10 or so years, was very very unhappy. But I don't know what it's like to grow up as a JW, so I don't know. I raised kids as JW, and I saw what happened to them. Um, but tell me what you know uh, with that experience on your mind. What are some of the things that you'd like to achieve that are different? Is it held you back from going to college? Is it? And I wouldn't put these ideas in their head, but the kind of things people might say is, yeah, I wanted to go to college for crying out loud, and I wasn't allowed. Now I can't make any money. And okay, so is that a goal, or is there something else that you like to work on first? If I determine that it's just somebody that is actually got a mental health issue or an emotional issue that I'm not really qualified for, I'm gonna say, look, you can come back to me, or I can work
Yeah.
with you simultaneously, but you probably should talk to a therapist. And I'm not saying that to the person that just posted that comment. I'm not trying to say, that you need a therapist. Believe me, I'm not saying it because I haven't talked one word to this person, so I have no idea. But if you can frame it in a goal based way, and again, that's just the way I work. Other life coaches might be a little different, but it goals in terms of I just want to be happy. I just want to make friends. I just want to be able to wake up in the morning and feel good.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we could talk about those things. What's getting in your way? And when I ask what's getting in your way, it might be, well, I wasn't allowed to do this, this, and that when I was 5 years old. And then when I was 10, I had to do this and this and that. I can't undo those things, but I can help you to see how you can reach your goals despite that. Because when you come down to it, no matter no matter what course we take, whether we go to a deprogrammer, a therapist, a psychiatrist, whether we take the psychotropic drugs or what have you, nothing can change what happened to us in the past. Nothing is ever going to change that. What we can change ourselves is how we view things. And I don't mean how we view what happened to us. And I'm not saying forget what happened to you, but I'm just saying from today on, what can I do differently that's going to actually make me the kind of person I want to be?
Yeah,
and that's what a good psychiatrist is going to help you do in a different way than me. And that's what I'm going to try to help you do too. It's just a different approach. Again, it's goal-based. It's about what do you want to accomplish?
Yeah. Well, I think the person that, when I put the comment up, has been helped because she made this comment. Feels great to keep going back to a life coach. The sessions getting shorter and the rabbit hole getting shallower. So it's obviously that Rocky has done that and totally agrees with what you say. That a life coach can be very, very beneficial in helping them to get out of the rabbit holes that were so deep.
Right. And
So,
it sounds like Rocky has done that, is learning not just how to reach a particular goal, but learning how to, cognate about things and get past all that head trash. And again, I'm not saying that to judge Rocky like you've got too much head trash, because I've got the same thing. It's like there are times when your head is so full of junk that you can't see anything in clear focus, and you learn how to do that kind of by yourself. I mean, a life coach is guiding you, but you've got there's something I wanted to read to you, if I might. And you might recognize this, but I'm not reading from the Bible, okay? and so you're probably familiar with hearing this, but it's going to sound a little bit different. Do not be anxious over anything, but in everything, along with thanksgiving, let the peace that surpasses all understanding guard your hearts and your mental powers. Does that sound familiar?
It does.
But what I took out of that is every reference to God, Jesus, Holy Spirit, not because I'm trying to atheize it or something like that, if there is such a word, but just to because the point that used to be made when we'd hear that scripture was that the sub point that somebody might make, if they're smart enough, is, you see, this says your mental powers. You have mental powers.
Yep, absolutely.
You can solve your problems. What happens is you get so overwhelmed with all kinds of junk, all the 10, 15, 20 problems that are overwhelming. And they are overwhelming. There's sometimes serious problems. Or there's so many of them that maybe half of them are not that serious, but you put them all together and it's a mountain on top of your head. You have the mental powers to figure out every one of those one at a time. The problem is that your brain your mind is clouded. The answer in the actual Bible is to pour out your heart to God. But what are you really doing? You're talking. You're praying, so you're talking to somebody that you don't. It's an article of faith that there's somebody listening. You don't really know, but that's really what you're doing. Is you're talking in your mind. When you talk to a life coach or to a good friend or your mother or father or whoever, you're doing the same thing, and you're clearing your mind of all that head trash. And you find out that I think is what Rocky's finding out, is that you have mental power to solve your problems. You just need a little bit of a nudge once in a while. So you might have to go back. And he's hearing that's how I felt. So yeah, thanks. And then the next time you have a problem, you might need a little nudge from somebody, but not the nudge you needed before. And you're probably never going to get to the point where like you never need help with a certain problem. You never need to ask advice of a good friend or something like that. And there's nothing wrong with asking advice, obviously. I mean, that's what world leaders do. They got whole cabinets and all these advisors around them because there's too much. So, but yeah, I can't emphasize that enough, is that we all have the mental power to solve our problems. We just need some help focusing sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you've given us some amazing things today, Gary. We really appreciate that. if we can encourage everybody to view a life coach as something that can help us, we will feel, like Linda said, with regards to mental health, it improves. And also, she says that our physical health also improves.
Yes.
That is so true. You'd agree with that?
Yeah, I do, and it kind of is a circle. It all, as your physical health, like I lost maybe 30 pounds recently, and not a big deal, but when you get on the scale and you realize, like, wow, it wasn't even that hard to do, and I did that. It makes you feel, because you did something for yourself.
Yeah.
That is, even when I was at JW, there was a point in time when I actually went to a place called the Princeton Brain Bio Clinic in Princeton, New Jersey. And because I was feeling depressed, and what I didn't realize is that my depression had everything to do with the elder body, so I thought I was clinically depressed, and it turns out I wasn't. But they basically, just prescribed some like CalMag tabs and zinc and nothing prescription. It's just you're missing a couple of ingredients, but it had more to do with the way I was thinking about things. But my point is that I was doing something for myself. I took this long drive, and we're not encouraged to do things for ourselves when we're JWs.
No.
It's about the organization. It's about the bigger picture, And I'm not saying just think about yourself. Think about yourself. I'm not encouraging people to be selfish, because that could be a problem in itself. It's like, if you never do anything for other people, it's kind of hard to feel good about yourself and to be productive.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, we didn't really do a whole lot to take care of ourselves, aside from eating breakfast and lunch and taking a shower. But doing that was huge. So I think I forget what her name is, because it's not up anymore. Talking about how physical health is affected too, and it kind of goes both ways. Because if your physical health, if you've been, if you feel being overweight was your problem, or you wanted more muscle tone, or you're just trying to get over some kind of illness that's due to not taking care of yourself, you feel like $1 million when you look at yourself in the mirror and you say, "There it is again. There you go, Linda Carmel. Thank you." You feel just so good, and guess what? You're able to help other people then, because you're doing better yourself.
Yeah, Linda just put up another comment as well with regards to a former nurse. And she's seen the benefit of that. The training saved my mental health whilst in the cult.
Yeah.
Now we're out. We want to save our mental health as well.
Right.
We need to keep working. Just like that video at the start where I had the coach there. Now, it doesn't sound like you're a yelling sort of a coach, but in that particular case, the coach was needed to make it seem that all things are possible with a little bit of encouragement. And if his mind wasn't right, then the team would not succeed. And that's the same with us. If our mind is not right, we ain't going to succeed.
Right.
So ones like yourself, we need it. It's essential to have individuals around us to be able to help us make the progress, get up, move on, or I should say move on and get up and be able to take off. Now, just so that everybody knows who's going to listen to the live stream and on board, Gary is part of something which we've put together, and we'll just play a short video at the moment. All right, so Dare to Dream.
Yeah.
That's what we've got part of our Life After JW group. Now, we know not everybody's in the space to be able to dare to dream. But if you like what Gary, or how Gary's spoken, our life coaches are amazing that we have in that Dare to Dream group. We'll put the link in the post again, so that if you want to reach out for the goals that you're setting yourself, you can do that. It's possible. We have ones who are willing to help us with our mind. once again, Gary, thank you very much for being able to be here with us today for the hour or so. I know it's getting a little bit, what's the time now? Oh, no, it's not that late. You haven't got to go to
6
bed
o'clock
yet.
my time.
6 o'clock your time on the Saturday
Yeah.
evening. We really appreciate your time. The points that you've mentioned have been very practical, and many of the comments right from the start have said that point. So thank you.
Thank you.
Now,
Can I mention the name of my website?
of course you can.
It's Open Path Life Coach is my business. So
What we'll do,
it's Open
can we
Path
get
Life
you to post it in the comments?
Yeah. And there's a whole page there on high control groups because that's my specialty.
Great.
So, yeah, thank you.